Welcome back to another episode of Asset Coach and Tax Strategist. If you're a subscriber, thanks so much for subscribing. If not, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Okay, so here we go. We haven't done an episode on California in some time, and there's been more and more articles popping up, and I think a lot of it just has to do because California really hasn't changed a whole lot in their thought process of what it's going to look like from the regulatory, from taxes. They keep really just, I don't know, buckling down. It's an odd thing to see. So there's a couple articles that popped up. I did some research. One of the things that we hear about California all the time is that, well, if they were their own country, they'd be the fourth largest economy in the world. Yes, but, and actually, what could they be? What could they be? I say they could be pretty darn close to being the second largest economy behind the United States. And over the years, the last few decades, they have made decisions to drive out certain industries and causing the economy. But now here's the thing, by driving out certain industries, also they have had certain industries that have grown. For example, the technology industry has grown significantly in the state of California over the last few decades, and to a point to where I think it's the thing that is actually keeping California as the fourth largest economy in the world. And I'm going to go through some articles and some statistics here to prove that, because the reality is that at some point when you get into a growth mode and you create this culture and environment like Silicon Valley has done, that culture itself really does not exist with the California regulations. And what I mean by that is that there's such a focus in that area of the incubators and the pods and the brain trust and the energy of trying to create new technologies and changes in the world. Austin in Texas has a very similar vibe if you've been down there, and different areas around not just the country within the United States, but also around the world. There's certain areas that just have that vibe, and I think Silicon Valley is one of those things where I don't even know if the state of California, if they even existed anymore, would that even change? I think the Silicon Valley has created its own universe, so to speak, that really, I think, in my opinion, is causing California to continue to be in the top GDP stats. And let me share some thoughts with you. I'm not going to share my screen, but there's a website called The Sun, an article The Sun by Daniel Glitchick, and I apologize. This is June 26th of this year, 2025, and it says, report: California companies are increasingly moving their headquarters out of the state. Now, this just rinse and repeat article, right? I mean, the title is just, okay, no duh. But it says, while the number of headquarters leaving California has remained small, the number has grown over a 10-year period. Now, what is the word small? Well, let's kind of go through here. According to the Public Policy Institute of California, recently issued a report that found the increase is in companies leaving California. So why? This is the biggest thing. Real quick. Why? California's tax and regulatory burden remained mostly unchanged during the decade, the study by the PPIC, while most other states reduced their tax and regulatory burdens. So that's what I mean by California just kind of buckles down. It feels like they just keep doing it. The taxes continue to increase. If you've ever been a viewer of this channel, you know that I used to live in California, in Orange County, and we left family and friends almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And, excuse me. And it's been a very, very difficult thing to leave family and friends. But when we go back and visit, California hasn't gotten better. Now, it's a nice place to visit now, but it just hasn't gotten better. And so what's the big picture here? Well, according to the report, while a number of companies leaving California has been small, companies still have been leaving for that greater rate. So in 2011, Okay, this study found that around 150 headquarters of company headquarters left California, a number of which jumped over 200 in 2021. Now, over that same time period, the number of relocations from other states dropped from 140 to under 70, meaning other states relocating to California. Okay, other companies from other states into California. Now, companies have relocated to other states such as Texas, which we know, Florida, Nevada, Arizona, some of those nearby states, and that was something that was true 20 some years ago. When I was in my early 20s, California had a kind of its, at least that I know of, me being an adult, that kind of first exodus. My age group at that time could not afford it. We left to Arizona, Nevada, Oregon. Oregon has changed significantly since then. But those were states that Californians fled to. Oh, Colorado was another one. Utah got some of them as well. So around half of the companies that left California were in manufacturing, wholesale trade, and business services. So California was manufacturing is one of those industries California is just driven out. Now, there's still a lot of manufacturing in California, but not like it used to be because they drove out aerospace. And when you drive out aerospace, that creates a lot of manufacturing that was beneficial. Companies like Toyota and Nissan moved their headquarters out of Torrance, California, and into other areas. Hyundai is still in Southern California, which I would imagine at some point they'll probably leave out as well. But it's one of those things where, you know, you have companies like Tesla and SpaceX and all these other companies that we start seeing that are leaving for all the same reasons. Now, California has over 47,000 company headquarters in the state. So from the 10-year period of 2011 to 2021, 789 companies moved their headquarters out of California. That's 1.9% of the total number of companies in the state. All right. Now, over that decade, California saw 7,250 companies launch in the state while 12,700 closed, with no year-by-year trends of either direction. Now, why did they close? Tax and regulatory burdens are a key factor for businesses when deciding where to locate their headquarters and may explain some of the trends that recently of headquarters moving. Now, here's the thing. When a headquarters moves, doesn't mean all their employees move. It means that they take the domiciled aspect of where that company is located and they move that out of state. Okay. So even though a lot of these headquarters have left California, they still have a lot of employees that still are in that state. Now, does that mean that they're not transitioning people out? Yes, there's some companies are transitioning certain staff out of the state, and over a period of time, you'll continue to see that decline of employees in the state continue to leave. And the reason being too is because it's getting more and more costly to live there. The cost of living it has increased over that period of time as well, significantly. The tax burden has increased, regulatory issues have increased, and so really it's kind of California's way of saying, you know what, hey, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, and we don't care about what the rest of you say. Now let's look at this breakdown. Now, when we look at California's economy, we're looking at a 4.1 trillion GDP, and this is as of 2024. Okay, now what makes that up? Well, you got Apple that's there, you got Nvidia, Alphabet, which is Google, and Meta, which is Facebook. That's what, four of the Magnificent Seven that are in that area. And this is all Silicon Valley, by the way, what I was talking about. They made up about $452 billion in 2023. Okay, that's about 14% of California's GDP. So now there's a large finance in California as well with Wells Fargo, Visa, Charles Schwab. Now, Charles Schwab has moved their headquarters, but they still have a lot of employees there in California. And that was between those just three companies, and the total finance sector is 577 billion as of 2023. So that's an 18%. Okay, so that's larger than the technology. Now you have entertainment where you have, yes, Disney, but you also have Netflix, which is Silicon Valley area, right? So that made up about $49 billion from film and TV, but then another 150 billion from tourism, okay, in 2023. So there's another 200 billion right there, okay? Now, to go to Disneyland nowadays, it's literally a lifetime trip. Now, when we were there and we had our young kids, we had annual passes, and so that was actually the cheapest thing we could do as a family was when we purchased annual passes because you were able to get in there. The downtown Disney at the time had 2 hours parking for free. We would drive down there, park the car, take the train from downtown Disney into that counted as one ride with the kids, and then we would go say, okay, you can pick one ride. We go pick one ride. We get an ice cream. We'd sit on the curb in Main Street, people watch, eat, and then we take the train back to downtown Disney, go home. Okay. And the kids loved it, but can't do that anymore. The cost of that is exorbitant. But my point is that we would sit there and we would watch these families that would buy those 3-4 day passes. And you can just see the exhaustion. You can see just just the exhaustion, just trying to get their money's worth from the cost of that because the food's expensive, the hotels are everything about it is expensive. So you had entertainment. Also you have energy. Chevron, which also has moved their headquarters, but Chevron, Occidental Petroleum, about 11% of the GDP. Okay. So there's from those four things, if we were to look at technology, 14%, let's use this calculator here. And then we got finance at 18%. You got energy at 11%, which is ironic to say energy in California. Especially Chevron and Occidental Petroleum, since California is trying to make the entire state electrical grid, which they can't even support. That's 43% right there. And then, of course, when you add the 200 billion in entertainment, you've got probably about another, I'd say, 10%. So you got 53% in those three sectors, which is pretty significant. Now, what would cause these states, these companies to leave the state? All the same reasons. All the same reasons. Now, again, the technology companies, I don't think are going to be leaving the state like we've seen already. I think yes, again, states like Austin and some of the other states that have created these technology hubs, these incubators, yes. You can see some of these companies leaving, but there's something unique about Silicon Valley and the energy that they've created and what they've done over the last 3 decades, so to speak, maybe even 4 decades, that really becomes very difficult to translate out. It's going to be over a period of time, which you are seeing over a period of time, people, companies, technology companies leaving. But they're leaving to other specific areas. So like Austin would be a great example. So let's take a look at here. Let's see. I'm trying to look at my screen here. I have some bunch of notes that I put here. So yeah, so you have Apple, Alphabet, Nvidia, Meta, Cisco, Intel, Hewlett Packard, Adobe, Applied Materials, Intuit, Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, eBay, KTLA, let's see here, Lam Research Corporation. I mean, the list goes on. Salesforce, Supermicro, PayPal Holdings, Visa, Wells Fargo, Charles Schwab, Gap, Williams Sonoma, DoorDash, Electronic Arts, Autodesk, ServiceNow, Palo Alto Networks, and the list goes on. Lots of big companies that we all know. And here and frequent. So I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing here that is really a very difficult thing from somebody who used to be in California is to continue to praise California as being this large behemoth state of economics when the reality is that, yes, there's a lot of farming in California, but the state has done everything they can to really drive it. But there's still a lot of vegetables, nuts. But Blue Diamond has just announced that they're going to be leaving. So there's this continued trend, and as the leadership in California continues to double down, dig their heels in, and continue to go down this pathway they've gone down, then it will continue to have a deficit. It will continue to see these companies leave, and with it comes the tax dollars. With it comes the tax dollars. This big, they're stupid enough to not realize that, hey, if we drive gas cars out of the state, oh, that's right, we get a lot of tax revenue from gas taxes. Oh, crap. And the state has saw that. And so all of a sudden, what do? They just passed this law, where it's going to add another 65 cents per gallon to the gas price in the state that's already the highest gas prices per gallon in the country. I don't know what to say. Now, if you're there in California as a citizen because you are a civil servant and you've got a pension, I get why you're staying there. Or you have like a law degree, you don't want to go past the bar exam, and you've been there 20, 30 years. I get that. But if I'm a business owner like I am, and I was there, would I leave? I did. Would I recommend other businesses to leave? Yeah, I would. I would. Now, that doesn't mean that the other small businesses aren't going to pop up. They pop up. They do. There's a lot of restaurants that go out of business, and there's restaurants that go into business, right? There's a need because people still live there. Right. But the reality is the cost of living there is eventually going to cause this force of driving people out that is going to be unsustainable for people to continue to live there. And that's kind of what I think the leadership wants. And there really hasn't been any punishment. They've continued to grow, even though companies have left. And the most people they've seen the largest exodus of population leave the state especially over the last 5 years since COVID, the pandemic in 2020 to now. But they haven't changed. In fact, what are they doing? Buckling down. So I don't know. I mean, I give California a failure rate for what they're doing, but you have these events. I just don't understand it that continue to drive it. And this is the capitalist aspect of California that really is driving some of these decisions of people leaving, but also why people are staying. Again, if I'm a restaurant, I'm going to open up a restaurant in the busy areas where there's a lot of people because people eat, right? So I get that. But as larger corporations staying in a state like that, if I were a larger corporation, I would definitely absorb the cost of move, and I'd move. I would move. I would take my company and I would leave the state, and I would have a exodus plan for my employees over the next 5 years, and I would leave every aspect of that state. Just what I would do. Why would I do that? Because I've already done that, and I've seen the results in my own business. I've seen the results in other people around here and where I'm located that have thrived, and the peace and the joy and the happiness that happens in this. It's a lot different. It's a lot different, and our family life's better. Our businesses have been better. There's just a difference. And I don't know how else to explain it, but so I give California a thumbs down, and it doesn't mean that I don't miss my family and friends. I wasn't happy having to leave California, but at some point you need to make a decision. If the environment and the decisions of the politicians continue in the way the politics are in California, is not going to change. They've structured the politics in California to continue to go down this pathway, and they should be in a position where they die on the vine. It should be on their own. They've made this bed. So But that's just one guy's opinion. That's just my opinion. And but the reality is that I do see very little future in the state of California. And Nvidia, Apple, the Magnificent Seven, really, I think, are driving the economy over there. If you saw any of those companies that I had mentioned leave the state, you'll start seeing an exodus. You'll start seeing, like, if Apple said, "Hey, we're going to leave," you'll start seeing more leave. You'll start seeing more of these startups leave. Stanford University has done an amazing job of helping the Silicon Valley and some of the things in the university at Stanford. And it's this ecosystem that is there that I don't think can just pick up and go someplace else. And that's what's causing the continued thriving within that state. And I, I get it, but I don't get it, right? But at the end of the day, you as an individual has full decision, you have full control over your decisions on what you're going to do. And that's what my family and I did, and others like us. So thanks so much for subscribing, and I hope you have a blessed day. If you are not a subscriber, go ahead to the subscribe button. Please feel free to give us a thumbs up and add a comment down below. Thanks so much. Have a great day.